thus far we have talked about one type of verb phrase in English, which is monotransitive. And we said that monotransitive verb phrases are very, very common in English. If you stop and just listen to what it is that you're hearing around you, you stop and you just become aware of what it is that you're saying, you're going to see that many, many, many of those instances of sentences that you use and you hear are monotransitive verb phrases. In other words, they're verb phrases comprised of a verb group plus a direct object. What is within the verb group? The verb, which is the main verb plus all of the auxiliary verbs. What is within the direct object is the noun phrase that comprises the direct object. So the direct object receives the action of the verb. That's how you know you have a monotransitive verb phrase. However, we also have other types of verb phrases because, for example, you can have a sentence in English like, I slept. So if we think about analyzing this sentence, I slept, we would want to say first that the subject of the sentence is I. It's occurring at the front of the sentence, which is what we always see in English. And what is occurring after this guy is the other necessary element of the sentence, which is the predicate. So I is the complete subject, slept is the complete predicate. I is what the sentence is about, and the information that the sentence gives you is that I engage in the act of sleeping. So that's what the predicate does semantically to the sentence. But notice that we don't have a direct object here, right? You can't say, I slept the bed, or I slept the pillows, or I slept my pajamas, or anything like that, right? Anything related to sleeping. It doesn't make sense to have that appearing as a direct object following the verb. Why? Because sleep is what we call an intransitive verb phrase. So this is the second type of verb phrase. Intransitive verb phrase means that you have a verb group, no complements. There is nothing that is going to follow the verb group. It's just the verb plus all the auxiliary verbs, and that's it. You don't have a direct object. You don't have anything that appears after the verb of the sentence. That's what it means to be intransitive. So if you think about it, intransitive, not transitive, in other words, not monotransitive, is that you're lacking the direct object that makes a verb monotransitive. So we have a lot of these in English. They're not as common as the monotransitive verbs, but we have a lot of them. So for example, you can say, the warrior died. The warrior died. So you know that who is the sentence about is the warrior. This is going to be the subject of your sentence. And then we know that what we're saying about the warrior is that he died. So died is going to be our predicate. But it is only comprised of a single word. And that single word must be a verb. Because what do you always have inside every sentence in English? A noun phrase followed by a verb phrase. So the smallest sentence of English that you can have will be made up of a word that is a noun followed by a word that is a verb. And that will always be subject and predicate of the sentence. So when you have the warrior died, the warrior being the subject, died is describing what happened to the warrior, but we don't say the warrior died the battlefield. You can say the warrior died on the battlefield. But notice that that's a very different meaning. When you say the warrior died on the battlefield, now we're talking about the location of an event. Where did the dying take place? But if you have the warrior died the battlefield, that's no longer possible. Remember that your direct object has to be a noun phrase, always a noun phrase. So when you have the warrior died on the battlefield, on is going to be a preposition, therefore you're going to have a prepositional phrase there, and you would know automatically, okay, on the battlefield cannot be my direct object. And when you think about it in terms of the meaning, on the battlefield is not receiving the action of dying, right? If anything, the warrior is receiving the action of dying. So in this sentence, it seems like you're really understanding that the warrior undergoes this action of dying. So it's intransitive because it's comprised of a verb group and only a verb group. What is the most information that you could have in a verb group would be a main verb plus a bunch of auxiliary verbs. So for example, if you had a sentence like, the children were running. So the sentence is the children were running. That's a complete sentence. We want to divide it up first into subject and predicate. Who or what is the sentence about? The children. So this is our subject. What are we saying about those children? What's the information that the sentence is conveying? It's conveying that those individuals are engaged in the act of running. So this is our predicate, we're running. And notice that this predicate is made up of only a verb group. Any predicate that is made up of only a verb group is necessarily intransitive. That's what it means to be intransitive. So we say that we're running is our verb group, main verb plus auxiliary verbs, which here is just were. And because there is no complement appearing after the main verb, that's why we have an intransitive verb group here. So if you think about other examples of intransitive verbs, something like she fell. If you say she fell, you can't really use a noun phrase after that as a direct object, right? You can't say she fell the stairs. You have to say something like she fell down the stairs, or she fell on the stairs, or she fell over the stairs. And what are you doing when you're creating each of those sentences? You're using a prepositional phrase. So you're using something that you know cannot be a direct object in principle. So those intransitive verbs are those in English that are fairly common. They're not as common as the monotransitives, but they're pretty common. And you know that you have one when you cannot have a direct object or any complement following the verb. It's just the subject and the predicate. The predicate is only comprised of the verb group. So for example, if you had a sentence like, the baby grew. Okay, we know that the sentence is about the baby. This is going to be the subject of our sentence. And the thing that we're learning about the baby in hearing this sentence is that the baby engaged in the act of growing. So grow is going to be the predicate of our sentence. What is happening within this predicate? Not very much, right? The only thing that you have here is the main verb. That comprises, in and of itself, the verb group of the sentence. Since there is nothing following this verb, we say that this is another example of an intransitive verb phrase. So, whenever you have a sentence comprised of a subject and a predicate, and within the predicate you have a verb group and no complement whatsoever, that's when you have an intransitive verb phrase. However, you have a few more different types of verb phrases, because it would be too boring if you just had monotransitive and intransitive, right? That would be no fun whatsoever. So we want to think about examples where it looks like you have something more than just what you have when you have a monotransitive. Example. So for example, if you have a sentence like, I gave the book to Phil. I gave the book to Phil. What's going on there? I gave the book So we look at this and we say, okay, this is a sentence in English, it's a complete thought, it expresses a complete thought, and who is it referring to in particular? It is referring to I, that is the topic of the sentence, that's the subject of the sentence. And what are we saying about this I, this individual who we have in front of the sentence? We're saying that this individual engaged in the action of giving the book to Phil. So, not only that, but that giving of the book to Phil took place when? In the past tense. We know that because we have gave here instead of give. So notice, another irregular verb in English. Sometimes when you're looking at the verbs of English, it's hard to come up with a lot of examples of regular verbs because we have so many irregular verbs. But keep in mind, if you're forming the past tense in any way, in other words, the meaning is that the event took place before, it is a past tense verb, and therefore it shows you that what you're dealing with here has to be a verb. It can't be anything else. So we have gave as not only the verb, but the verb group because we don't have any auxiliary verbs here. And then we look further here and we say, okay, I gave the book to Phil. It looks like we really have two things here. We have the book and we have to Phil. So what is the book doing with respect to this giving event? The book is the thing which is given. In other words, the book is the direct object of the verb. Why is it the direct object? Because it's receiving the action of the verb. So when I say I gave the book to Phil, presumably the book has changed position from being with me to being with Phil as a result of this giving event. So what that tells us is that the book is undergoing a change, is affected by the event of giving, and therefore must be the direct object, and not surprising, it is a noun phrase. If it were anything else, then we would know it cannot be a direct object. Well, what about to Phil? What is the role that to Phil plays here? Because this cannot be the direct object. Why? We only always have, at most, one direct object in a sentence. Only, always, always. So, if you have a sentence like, I slept, you just don't have any direct objects. But if you have a sentence like, I saw Mary, then you have a single direct object. Notice that you can't say, I saw Mary Phil, where both Mary and Phil would be direct objects, even though it would make sense, because it would mean something like, I saw Mary and Phil. But you have to add that word and, that conjunction that forms a phrase from Mary and Phil. You can't just say, I saw Mary Phil, and have that be both interpreted as a direct object. So only one direct object per sentence. And so if we think about to Phil, we would see, well, anyway, this is comprised of a preposition and a noun phrase. Structurally, it couldn't be a direct object anyway, because it's not a noun phrase, it's a prepositional phrase. So what is the role that this guy plays in the sentence? We said, I gave the book to Phil means that I engaged in the act of giving this individual thing called the book to Phil. So in other words, Phil is the recipient of the direct object. And the recipient of the direct object is what we call the indirect object. So IO stands for indirect object. And the indirect object is always the recipient of the direct object. So what does that mean? It means you're only going to have an indirect object when you already have a direct object. If you don't have any direct object in the sentence, you have no possibility of having an indirect object. So, indirect object is the recipient of the direct object. That's going to be true for every single sentence in which you have a direct object and an indirect object. And the term that we want to use for this type of sentence is ditransitive. So if you think about ditransitive, what we're saying is that as opposed to monotransitive, right, one transitive, the verb takes one object. Ditransitive, the verb is taking two objects, which are the direct object and the indirect object. So these are the third type of verb phrase that we have in English. We said that the monotransitive verb phrases are probably the most common. You'll hear them all around you if you start listening for them. The intransitive verb phrases are also fairly common, and ditransitives are a little bit less frequent. So there are only certain verbs that can appear as ditransitive verbs in English. And the one that you will see most commonly is the verb gave. So you can just keep in mind, okay, whenever I see the verb give in any form, whether it's gave or has given or was giving or any form of the verb give, you will always have a ditransitive verb phrase there. But what other types of verbs could you have that would have ditransitive? What if you have something like, the groom will purchase a new car for his mother-in-law? So let's put that sentence up here and think about what is going on with that one. So the groom will purchase a new car for his mother-in-law. Okay, so we think about what we know the sentence must be comprised of, the direct object, no, cross that out, the subject, and the predicate. Okay, so go back, erase that, no direct object. You don't always have a direct object. You always have a subject and you always have a predicate. Okay, so the subject in the sentence is who or what it is that we're talking about in the sentence is the groom. So we say that the groom is the subject of the sentence. And notice that once we start looking at the rest of the sentence, we know what we expect to find. We expect to find the predicate of the sentence. And this is indeed what we have appearing after the subject. Breaking our predicate down, we want to think, what do we know we're going to have within a predicate? A verb group plus the complements of the verb. The verb group here is going to be will purchase. Why not just purchase? Why do we have to include the word will here? Because think of what will is doing in this sentence. It's functioning as an auxiliary verb. And an auxiliary verb can only appear when you have a main verb. So auxiliary verbs are helping verbs, but they're helping main verbs. They can never appear by themselves. So you can't say, the groom will a new car for his mother-in-law. That doesn't work because we need a main verb for each sentence. So will purchase as a unit is the verb group. It's the main verb plus all the auxiliary verbs, which is just the verb will. And then we have a new car for his mother-in-law. What's going on with this? Well, a new car for his mother-in-law seems to be broken up into two phrases, right? Because you have this idea of a new car, and then you also have this idea of for his mother-in-law. In other words, that this car is intended for this person. So a new car looks like it's going to be the direct object because it's following immediately the main verb, it's a noun phrase, and most crucially, it receives the action of the verb. So when you say the groom will purchase a new car for his mother-in-law, a new car is the thing that is purchased. So we're going to say that the direct object in this sentence is a new car. If we stopped analyzing there, then we would say, okay, we have a verb group plus a direct object. That must mean that we have what type of verb phrase? Just a monotransitive, right? Verb, direct object, that's the end of the story. However, for his mother-in-law, what is going on here? Notice that the recipient of the car is intended to be his mother-in-law. And notice also that we do not have a noun phrase here, we have a prepositional phrase. Typically, indirect objects appear with the preposition to and the preposition for. more commonly, you're going to find examples of indirect objects with the preposition to, but you also have examples of indirect objects with the preposition for. So whenever you see one of those guys, you're going to think to yourself automatically, okay, wait a minute, is this an indirect object? And how do you answer that question? Is this the recipient of the direct object? If you go back in your sentence and you see, oh, well, I don't have a direct object, then you know you can't have an indirect object. You know it can't be ditransitive. You have to have both a direct object and an indirect object to have ditransitive. Notice what is interesting about ditransitives is that they are comprised of, as we said, the verb group plus the direct object plus the indirect object. And the direct object, of course, we know is always going to be a noun phrase. The indirect object is looking like a prepositional phrase, not a noun phrase, right? So the for or the to phrase. And so the idea is that when you have the ditransitive type of verb phrase, you actually have an option of whether to say the sentence in this way or in another way. So in other words, this is one possibility for the ditransitives, but you also have the possibility of having another structure, which would be something like John gave Mary the book. So think about the meaning of this sentence. John gave Mary the book. What is going on there? Who is the sentence about? It's about Mary. So we know that it's about John. So you know that the sentence subject is going to be John. And what is the action that is being undergone here is this giving event. That's going to be your verb group. And now think about Mary and the book. What is the thing that is given? The thing that is given is not Mary, it's the book, right? Because the book goes to Mary. So the book is actually the direct object in this sentence. Although it's not appearing immediately after the verb, because immediately after the verb we have what? An indirect object. So in English you have two options when you have a ditransitive. You can either have the direct object first and then the indirect object, or you can have the indirect object first and then the direct object. How are you going to tell apart the indirect from the direct object? The indirect object is always a recipient of the direct object. You can have a direct object in a sentence without an indirect object, but you can never have an indirect object in a sentence without a direct object. So let's look at a couple of more examples, and the basic pattern that we're seeing here with this example is verb group plus indirect object plus direct object. And notice that when we have that order, the indirect object appears as a noun phrase. So when you say, John gave Mary the book, it's not John gave to Mary the book, it's just John gave Mary the book. And we understand that the book goes to Mary. So we understand it as being semantically an indirect object, although we see that in this particular example, it doesn't appear with a preposition. So the indirect object, when it appears first, appears as a noun phrase. When it appears second, it appears as a prepositional phrase. The direct object always, always, always appears as a noun phrase. So that will never change for any example. That will always be the case. Okay, so we will talk about a couple of more different types of verb phrases, and then I'm going to give you guys some examples to go through just to get some practice in terms of identifying the subject, the direct object, the indirect object, etc.